Nuclear moment, eh, folks? So, something, these things cross paths. And sometimes I just have to do a video, or I write a note to do a video for another day, but this one's today and today. Anyway, um, someone elsewhere mentioned Lyme disease. And if you've watched more than one video, Lyme disease was first detected or found near a nuclear facility. So this is something called cluster studies. So when you see an outbreak of something, you define on a map the location of it, and physically they are located near a nuclear plant. Now, does that matter? All right, we've spoken about biological accumulation, but there's also biological location and dosimetry. And yeah, here we go, deep nuclear shit again. But one of the artifacts of nuclear is genetic change. That's simply a fact. This is the one of the other videos about zero, right? Zero risk is just not a possibility because a tree could fall on you. So this is how things are evaluated into society. Is there a risk to enough of the population that will get caught? Can I get away with this? And it's not get away with it. It's a good versus bad kind of thing. It's this big corporate, huge level before, and this is what the FDA is about. This is what the CDC is about. This is what the Department of Energy is about. These long-term looks outside, past and beyond today, and what's could affect tomorrow. So back to the Lyme disease and the ticks. I think there is enough association that it's reasonable to think that could have happened. Have other disease, have other pathogens done the same thing in those areas? This is science. This is what is another video is promised inside of those commercial nuclear reactors. When those 110 or 15, whatever the total operating fleet count was, were commissioned, and it was much at the same time, and it was, I was a kid, little then, but still that science was kind of the promise of this, because there was a danger and we were aware that there was a risk and a danger, and we wanted to learn about it. So back to Lyme disease and ticks, that is a statistical similarity, and further statistical analysis would prove any reality in it. But in order to do the statistics, you have to have the science. You have to have some numbers with meaning, some global geospatial super duper data sets that come back and have a history that you know for decades. They're journals written on paper in the good old days. Now they're journals written on computers, and it's access to that data that's licensed and agreed on, and you don't get access unless you agree on. That means you understand the rules for accessing the data. So yeah, it's a big data world out there too. So to the upper, I'm not sure which side this comes out on, but right above my head is the hummingbird feeder, and I've heard a few, so they might come up while I'm blathering here. Anyway, something else to look for. That's why we're looking for hummingbirds today. So this is just a sidebar conversation, a non sequitur part of nuclear pollution. But the truth of nuclear pollution is it is a genetic long-term risk. Every aspect of it is. A health professional knows this. A reactor manager knows this. A engineer, an electrician, a boiler maker, a turbine specialist, um, any trade that comes in and works in those environments does have a pretty good understanding of what they're getting into, and probably a good paycheck for doing it. So don't discount what's done on these large scales against small scales. So we've got 110 operating nuclear reactors. Uh, Arnie Gunderson used to follow very heavily and be involved, and this is one of the things that stopped the nuclear industry for a long time, was people even talking about reactor embrittlement, right? You remember that one, right? Remember? So this is what Mr. Gunderson did and had engineering groups do, and understood when the reviews and the data was set on a desk in front of him what it meant. And the people even doing the analysis, the data collection, might not have fully understood what this meant because they didn't do the last collection to know how much blah. So yeah, this is time. This is big, large systems. But time, radioactivity has been in our planet since before we were on our planet. And there's decay rates that say which part does what, which to worry about and which not to. So that's where biological accumulation and biological proximity to radiation. There was some great photos I lost in history. The hard drive they were archived on, the links have disappeared, and there was only 2 or 3 of these sites that I know of, maybe 4 if Russia had one, but they were called atomic gardens. If you go search for atomic gardens now, you probably will have a tough time finding. They basically look like relics of days gone by. A nuclear source in the middle of a large circular fenced off field. There's a hummingbird back behind me. So if you can see him back there, it's on the far side of the feeder, feeding right now. And they'll probably stay there. They like to watch. If I'm here, they're going to watch motion around them, so they won't turn their back. One of them will. That's my buddy. Been around for years. So what is this nuclear plant of 110? If you look at the divide, the bulk of them are on the East Coast. The West Coast managed to keep those in place. The East Coast was and still is the most heavily industrialized area. The other area that needed and got a nuclear reactor, and that was for World War II and the Cold War, was Texas. And you look at the chemical plants down there, which we've spoken about, right? You know, the top 50 tier chemical companies in the planet, top 10, they needed energy for something. One of them was to extract minerals from seawater. And go look at how many minerals are in seawater, do some maths, and figure out how many gallons would you have, how many billions of gallons an hour would you have to pump to extract a meaningful quantity of material from seawater. So pretty impressive stuff been happening out there. But that's what puts the airplanes in the air and the food on your tables. So turning one of these off is not today, but let's make plans. The replacement for nuclear shouldn't be nuclear. There's no waste cycle. That's the key right there. We're inventing new ways to make waste we don't know how to deal with, or don't want to deal with, or can't afford to deal with, really. Where should the waste go? To me, they need to reopen the whole conversation again. Our mining, specifically deep bore, deep well mining technology, has come so far that deep sequestration should be discussed again. And that's where you actually put the stuff down in the Earth's crust that's going to roll over some millions of years back into the core of the Earth, and we would be long gone before any risk to humanity came back from that level of waste. Now, the cost of doing that is going to be huge. You're talking deep sea mining, and if people wanted to talk about deep sea mining, then that might open up another can of worms, which was another video. So there you go, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Thank y'all. Keep on. I hope these do something.